Hi, this is Julie Murphy with Arizona Farm Bureau, where it's Friday, it's 10 o'clock, and we're doing Talk to a Farmer Friday as we do every Friday morning. So welcome for those of you that are joining us live. And we're in the midst of a series, as I like to call them, this one being the Census of Agriculture. This is the United States Department of Agriculture's regular census that occurs every 5 years. These were numbers that were captured in 2022. All the aggregation and tabulation was done in 2023, and they just released them this year in February. So keep in mind that USDA's Census of Agriculture is a spotlight in time, kind of historical, and these numbers were captured in 2022. So I'm celebrating our Arizona numbers, trying to drill down on them to find all sorts of interesting facts and data on them. We've interviewed some of our U of A professors. One example was George Frisvold, who's our economist from the Extension Service. And the whole point of this is to find out about our agriculture in the state of Arizona. But I also want to talk to our farmers. And I've come to Pinal County. You might recall that 2 weeks ago we were in Yuma County. Well, Pinal County happens to be one of those counties, along with two other of our counties, Yuma and Maricopa counties, that are listed in the top 40 counties across the United States. And that's pretty impressive, knowing that we have at least, I think they said 3,000 counties in the United States. So what does that mean? It is these three counties in Arizona, Pinal, where I'm in right now, Yuma and Maricopa are very high producing agriculture counties. Again, we fall in the top 40. So that's why I'm here talking to Noah Hiscox from Pinal County. We connected about 1.5 years ago with something similar to this. So my question to you first, starting out, Noah, is give us a little bit of background about how you happened to get into farming.
I was teaching math in Tucson, Arizona. I started in 1974 after I graduated from the University of Arizona, and taught 4 years. I was teaching just high school freshman algebra. And in 1978, my father, who it turns out was developing Parkinson's disease, we didn't know it at the time, he needed help and wanted to basically sell his little 80-acre farm. It was a small farm with a really large hog operation on it. He had over 6,000 hogs, fairly to finish on that operation. And so it was an opportunity for me, I thought, to actually make some money and go back to the farm, which I loved. My original contract to teach school for a full year was $7,800 a year. So I was pretty sure I could do better than that. And at that time, my wife and I wanted to start a family and have some children, and we couldn't afford to otherwise. So that's how we began.
It's kind of a tale of some of our, story of so many farmers and ranchers that I know that you might not have initially thought you wanted to get into farming. Your dad invited you back, and then the rest is history. That's pretty cool. And I've always enjoyed talking to farmers to find out how they began in this very interesting, very exciting, and very impressive industry. We need agriculture. We need to be able to feed ourselves, and these are things that are so important.
I should add, Julie, that, and I hope this is a kind of a personal thing. My father had, as I say, a small hog farm, wanted me to buy him out. That didn't work out. The price of hogs, Cudahy, Bar S went out of business. That's where they were delivering their hogs. He was having to deliver clear to California. The price of hogs dropped down so dramatically that he couldn't afford to sell. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but this is kind of an interesting insight in how because we farm currently about 3,000 acres, and no animals, just, cotton, alfalfa, and many small grains. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew I wasn't going to stay on the hog farm. And one day, we lived out on the hog farm, a little tiny house, and there was a knock on the door. And I opened the door, and there was a stranger standing there, and he reached his hand out to greet me and shake my hand. He said, "My name is Fred Pretzer, and although you don't know me, I know you, and I have 200 acres of farm ground that I'd like to lease you."
Awesome.
And that's how I got started.
That's awesome.
He had a bunch of old equipment, and he said, "You're welcome to any of it," which most of it was not worth using. And so I overnight, I became the irrigator, tractor driver, the end all be all on that farm. I was the one and only employee, and I planted 200 acres of cotton, and that was in 1979, and we made 2.5 bales to the acre for a yield, which at that time 2 bales was a very good yield.
Yeah.
So I made an excellent yield, and the price of cotton went from the 50s to $1 a pound.
Wow.
And so I was in business.
Yeah. Finally, you're finally making a little bit more income than
Yeah,
on a math teacher's salary.
Yeah.
So, back to the Census of Agriculture and how productive we are here in the state of Arizona. And 3 of our counties, just mentioned Pinal, where we're at, Pinal County, Yuma County, Maricopa County. What's your take on how productive Arizona is? And the Census of Agriculture proves this.
Well, I think we had talked earlier that Pinal County alone produces, I think it was, the number was over $23.3 billion. And I think that although we're busy producing, and what was traditionally the 3 C's, but there's a lot more than that goes into it. As I mentioned, there's a lot of alfalfa that's grown now in Arizona, and we grow quite a bit of small grains in Arizona as well, and then some vegetables, not a lot, but I know that myself alone, we have about 500 acres of small grains, and this year, and we grow for Mediterra Bakehouse, for Hayden Flour Mill, for Maine Grains, and several other companies we supply grains for. That Hayden Flour Mill obviously turns that into flour, and then they provide flour to many businesses, whether they be bakeries, Barrio Breads in Tucson.
Yep.
I could name many breweries, on and on, that use our products. So we are a lot bigger than people think, and I think those numbers would really show that.
That 23.3 billion is statewide. However, Pinal County, just in cash receipts, I want to say is around 2 billion, just in the county.
Okay.
And again, with Yuma, same point. Just very productive. We kind of credit a lot of it with the 300 plus days of sunshine. So we're basically getting to grow year round. Where if you and I and the rest of our farmers and ranchers in Arizona transplanted to the Midwest, I don't know if we'd like that, because their growing season is a lot shorter than ours. They do amazing with their soybeans and their corn, but you get an average of 8 cuttings a season?
Yeah, well, we will have 8 balings.
8 balings.
And often there's 1 or 2 green chops in addition to that.
So basically 10 almost. Whereas in the Midwest, if I'm growing alfalfa, I'll be lucky if I get 4 to 5 cuttings. So
some places there are years they have only 1.
Wow. So I think that says a lot to Arizona agriculture. It's certainly our sunshine. It's one of the C's climate that affirms that we can be very high productivity. Speak, Julie.
Well, we actually have some of the highest cotton yields in the world, and we also have, without any argument, the highest quality, not only
Yes.
cotton, but particularly
Yeah.
durum,
Yeah.
different grains. Durum wheats, our durum wheats are in demand all over the world. I was associated, myself and Steve Sossaman, with a wheat cooperative, Arizona Wheat Growers here, and we visited France and Italy, and we took them samples of our wheat, and they were just in awe of these giant golden plump berries that we produce compared to what the rest of the world produces.
Yeah.
And even if you go up in the Dakotas, they grow a lot of wheat, but it's a very tiny little shriveled up berry.
Yeah.
As compared to ours.
Compared to what we do. Yeah, our desert durum is highly prized with our Italian pasta makers, and I guess we export quite a bit of it to Italy and to your point, some of our other countries.
Yeah, if they didn't have companies like Barilla, Viceco in Italy, if they couldn't blend our high quality durum with theirs, they couldn't begin to make the quality pasta that they make.
Right.
And it's not just durum wheat that we shine. Obviously, in cotton production, in cotton seed production,
Oh yeah.
the rest of the world really depends on Arizona for consistent, high quality cotton seed production.
And we do the same thing with our vegetables. Yuma is really well known for the seed production because, again, we're growing year round. And to your point, a lot of these other countries are reliant on our high quality seed that we develop. Pausing for station identification, so to speak. This is Julie Murphy with Arizona Farm Bureau and Noah Hiscox, a Pinal County Farmer that I just love talking to because I always learn so much. I want to remind you that if you joined us live, you can certainly post questions, and Joel, lead camera person, will through our phone, will give us a heads up if somebody wants to post a question. But for those that have joined, thank you. And then, of course, we will save this to our Instagram account. We will also upload to YouTube and share on our website for some of my followers that don't really like to use their social media or use social media in general. So my second question around the USDA Census of Agriculture has to do with our young farmers. So a very small percentage at 7.2% represent the younger farmer, 35 years old and below. What would you say to this young farmer demographic to inspire them to stay in the business or pursue the business? What's your perspective on that?
Obviously, number one, anybody that belongs to a family farm in the first place, which is, there's not very many, it's a really small percentage, but if you are lucky enough to have been born into a farming family, my goodness, stick with it. Do everything you can to learn all you can and just stick with it. And then I would encourage families to do all the estate planning that they can early on. I have a good friend, Max McGuire, that was working with Next Gen Seed Company, and many people know him in this vicinity, and he's now back on his the farm in Texas with his father. But for many years, he just went out and worked in the industry and gathered a bunch of knowledge, and that's probably for those people that are on family farms. Go out and experience the world and learn what you can in an ag-related field. Come back and actively farm with your family. And if you just are interested in and you weren't fortunate enough to be born into a farming family, get jobs in the industry, work in the industry, meet people. Eventually the door will open for you. God will open a door for you.
Yeah. I love that. And yours was interesting. So your father kind of did encourage you to come back in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you had a double dose of blessing, I guess, because you had a gentleman knock on your door who had some land, and that family farmed as well, correct?
Yes.
I think they did.
Yeah, his name was Fred Pretzer.
Right.
But yes, my father needed me to come home and help on his small farm. There was no future there for me, and it was a livestock operation. It was not although he did have a little bit of farmland accompany it. God just merely knocked on my door. He picked me out.
Yeah.
Yes, that was my opportunity to do that. It was just, there was no question about that. It was a gift from God, and so you just don't give it up. There are lots and lots of opportunities in the ag business and in the industry to start in a related field, and if you want it bad enough, pray about it. God will open the door for you.
Yeah, that I truly believe too, because sometimes the way things drop into our lap, we would never imagine it in a million years.
Or whatever you wanted, it will be 10 times better.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Just have a little faith. What are your aspirations for your family and your farming? Is there, because I think you have 2 boys, right?
And I have a boy and a girl.
Oh, okay.
And my son is an eye doctor in Tucson, and he and his wife are both eye doctors, and they have 2 clinics. They're doing very well.
And a very important profession.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And he and I talked about the time he was wrapping up his doctorate, because he wasn't 100% sure that he didn't want to stay on the farm, and I would have loved to have him stay on the farm. We just had to look at the odds of being successful. It's pretty tough.
It is.
You have to really be tough, and he was obviously quite gifted, and he had a degree, and God opened other doors for him, and he's doing very well. My daughter started out as a music teacher, and now she's a dental hygienist, and her husband is affiliated with Pinal College.
Okay.
He runs their tutoring program.
Okay.
And I think he has well over 100 tutors that work under him.
Wow.
And so I'm unfortunately, I do not have a son or a daughter that can step in my footsteps.
Sure.
So I'm working on that.
Okay.
I'm working on that, how we can preserve what we've created. And my goal is to have this family farm be here for my children's children's children.
Yeah, awesome.
But that's not going to be, haven't worked out all the details yet.
So it might have to skip a generation. Maybe it's some of your grandkids, and or some of the other ways that it can align.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's some veterans out there that really want to farm, and they just don't have the opportunity. Sometimes different farm families that have the current upcoming generation not wanting to do it, sometimes they can work something out with that. We didn't follow in our dad's footsteps. Mom and Dad farmed, and I have 3 brothers and then me, and not one of us picked it up. But it was funny, Dad kind of discouraged us from it. He said, you need to discover what you're good at and then pursue that. And he goes, I will have no issues with you not pursuing farming, which was kind of interesting.
There's many opportunities to lose money in agriculture.
I know.
And currently, you're particularly vulnerable because the stance the United States government really is not. They're not generous to agriculture right now. There were some safety nets in place 20 years ago that they're not available anymore.
Right.
So
that makes it hard.
It makes it very challenging.
What do you like most about farming, especially in Pinal County? You can be Pinal County centric with your comment on that.
Well, I think that the fact that we are in a really special location, that we can grow just about anything. We have so much sunlight, and it's warm here, and crops thrive. All they require is water. And I farm primarily on San Carlos Indian Reservation, and water has been it's been problematic, but I see cycles of about 22-year cycles of wet and then dry, wet and dry. And I've experienced, when I first started in the late 70s, that we had experienced about 20 years of drought. And then in 1978, it rained the whole winter and actually filled San Carlos Lake and ran over Coolidge Dam for the first time in history. In one winter, it filled that, and at that time it would hold 1,100,000 acre feet.
Wow.
And now it currently only will hold 900,000 acre feet, because the gates were not, on the top, were not maintained properly, and unfortunately. So, but I'm also blessed to be on the San Carlos Irrigation and Drainage District Board, and we've been working vigorously to rehab the entire system. And we've just finished Reach 2 and starting on Reach 3, and then there's Reach 4.
When you say Reach 2, Reach 3...
Yeah, Reach 2 is basically to to Picacho Lake.
Oh, okay.
And then from there to Highway 87 will be Reach 3.
And when you say you're putting in cement ditches?
Yeah, we're lining canals, putting in new gates. There are pools that will hold water so it can fluctuate, and yet the demand can go up and down, but there are holding pools so that water can just sort of be kept there temporarily. Reach 3 will go all the way to Casa Grande.
Oh, wow.
Reach 3 will go to Highway 87. Reach 4 will go all the way to Casa Grande.
Okay.
And that's our biggest loss, that canal all the way to Casa Grande. It's currently a dirt canal.
Mm.
But the goal was to line all the major canals in San Carlos and from Diversion Dam, not road. And I'm hopeful that this will, because the losses through the canal system, this will effectively, it won't double our allotments, but probably increase them by maybe an additional 40%. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that is.
Because with water we can do anything here. We enjoy the perfect weather, the perfect growing conditions, for the highest quality, whether it be durum, wheat, or cotton.
Yeah. You know what strikes me about you explaining the goals of the irrigation district is how complicated an irrigation district system can be. And just in Pinal County, most people don't realize that there's quite a few irrigation districts just within this county. But it's truly this county that makes us and allows us to do some of the things that we do with water, because there's these different situations even within just the county of Pinal County.
Yeah, and most of the irrigation systems in Pinal County they were CAP districts.
Right.
They have their own wells to pump groundwater, but as you all know, the CAP water for non-Indian ag is basically over.
It's gone.
And
yeah.
so that has definitely reduced the acres that those farms can plant. I would say that most of them are they have adequate water to grow at least 50% of their lands, and that's pretty much what San Carlos is faced with all the time, year round.
Right. Yeah.
And that gives you an opportunity to rotate your crops and rests your ground. Or you can plant lower water demand crops, such as small grains will use about a little less than half what alfalfa will use, and so that gives them opportunities to to plant some other varieties that are crops that will be lower water use, and they can still plant more of their acreage. So I think that Pinal County is a real jewel. It's a beautiful agricultural community. If we can keep it that way, it's going to provide opportunities for people that want to farm for hopefully decades.
We've probably spoken to this issue a little bit just by landing on the irrigation district issue, technology, because really, even lining a dirt ditch with cement is a technology improvement. We've been doing it for quite some times, but that doesn't mean that every system out there, based on any number of constraints, means that irrigation district has 100% perfectly lined ditches. The irrigation district that my family was in was the MSIDD, or the Maricopa Stanfield Irrigation and Drainage District. That's one of the pretty big ones, and they're the ones that were very reliant on the CAP water, and that's all. But fortunately, they had already started an infrastructure transition build out, pivoting away from surface water to groundwater, which meant some old pumps were being reformatted, for lack of a better term. There's probably
Rehab.
Yeah, rehab, and some totally brand new wells, but the drought sped up a little bit quicker than what their plotted and planned transition would take. So, and hopefully, that's continuing. But on the whole issue of technology, do you see a technology that you think has the most potential for Pinal County's future?
Well, one of the things that we did, Julie, it's been about 15 years ago, we started planting all of our crops in borders on flats.
Okay, explain that.
So, for example, the way we would grow cotton is our borders are 83 feet wide, and that will accommodate 24 rows, and with a 38-inch spacing, and we plant with a 12-row planter. So when we enter a border from the road on the bottom of the field, it's simply one round, and we've planted that entire border.
Wow.
And move into the next border.
Okay.
And by planting on the flats, when we get ready to plant a field, each border is perfectly leveled. It's dead flat side to side with 0.02 infall, which that just means it's 0.02 times 12 inches per 100 feet.
A slight.
Very, very,
Very slight. Okay.
Yeah. A field that's a quarter mile long is only about an inch and a half lower at the bottom than it is at the top.
Okay.
So it's just enough to help move the water quickly through,
Okay.
but not too fast, so that it has time to penetrate the soils.
So growing on the flats, you've done all the land laser leveling.
It's all
Yeah.
laser leveled.
Okay.
Yes, and consequently, the pre-irrigation, which in Arizona we pre-irrigate and then we wet plant almost always, not always, but almost always, and so you're moving that water over a smooth surface, so it moves along fairly quickly, and we will probably use about 0.6 to 0.7 acre feet per acre on a flat, whereas if you have it, your land is in furrows and hills, typical rows, you'll be using easily easily 1 acre foot per acre.
Right.
So we'll save 0.3 to 0.4 acre feet per acre just in the pre-irrigation process. And then on the first irrigation, once your crop is up and growing and it's done, we'll save easily another about 0.5 inches.
Wow.
So over a period of from beginning to the end of the crop, we feel confident that we'll easily save about 1 acre foot per acre,
1 acre foot per acre.
which is a lot.
Which is huge if you think. Did I not hear you say you're managing 3,000 acres?
Yes.
So calculate the numbers on that. That's quite a bit. And the whole concept for my listeners that maybe are urbanites or live in the city, that whole idea is that I always used to say tabletop smooth until a farmer corrected it. It's not tabletop smooth, Julie. It's got that slight slant so that the water moves quickly. There's not pooling, and then you really have to fill up that pool, and it pushes. So
there's zero waste.
There's zero waste.
Yeah, there is no tailwater, and with that perfect slope, it's just, and it will vary depending on the soil types.
Okay.
For example, I have a good friend, a dear friend I love. Her name is Penny Malone. She has a little farm down in the Eloy area, just off of Milligan Road, and close to the Picacho Mountains. Her intake, the intake level is so high that when we lasered those fields for her, the slope was 0.5. Excuse me, 0.05. I beg your pardon. 0.05
real
per 100.
slight. Okay.
Yeah. So where ours is 0.02,
Okay.
hers is 2.5 times steeper.
Oh, okay.
Because the intake levels are so high, and that it just,
you have to run the water faster to her because her soil is so absorbent.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of granite in that soil down there,
Okay.
and so there can be other parts, other soil types where particularly when the length of the field is shorter. If you have maybe you have only 200 or 300 row fall. In some cases that will be the 0-0. They'll be perfectly level.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and
I didn't
depending on the soil type.
Depending on the soil type will influence the level of the slant, and I didn't realize that. Thank you. I just learned something new today. Because my dad, on our farm, Mom and Dad did all the level lasering as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to ask, because I know he'll remember, because he's always talking about his farming. He'll probably be able to tell me what his slant was based on his soils. And the other thing people don't realize, it can change from field to field.
Yes.
In the south end of your farm, the slant might be, because Dad, he could tell you the soil makeup from one end of the farm to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always fascinated by that stuff.
Yeah, I brought this to show you. There's a company by the name of High Ground Soil Management Services. They're affiliated with Helena Chemical Company, and we've been doing these workups this is just for one field 7S, and I can show you quickly. They take it's an electromagnetic sensor.
Okay.
It shoots a signal into the ground at 2 different depths. I believe it's 2 feet and 5 feet. And it produces an electric conductivity data field. And then from that, they can determine basically all the things that you may be short of, or you have extra,
So
calcium,
what did he say?
magnesium.
Oh my goodness.
Well, here's a.
And are they doing that by drones, satellite drones?
No, they pull a sled.
Oh, okay.
On a 4-wheeler, and they grid it.
Okay.
I believe it's every 100 feet in both directions, and make a checkerboard out of it. And then here's a typical. This is this one particular field. This field has been border leveled on a contour. So originally the water ran from south straight north. This is cut way over and the rows run on about a 45-degree angle. Now, we cut them up the hill so that we would have very little dirt to move.
Wow.
And so the borders they're all parallel borders, but it turns and goes basically up the field to we found the natural 0.02 slope in this field.
Wow.
So we didn't when we didn't in the leveling process, we didn't have to move practically no dirt at all.
Okay.
So it was immediately productive the next day.
Wow.
Not having to take years to build it back up again.
What do the different colors represent?
Yeah, these there's five different regions. Four different regions
within that one field.
Within that one field, and it shows that the soil types vary dramatically. This bright yellow is a Coolidge sandy loam. Then there is the darker color is a Levine loam, and then the majority of it is a Mohawk clay. Those are soil types. Yeah, just in one field. Yeah.
So you will either fertilize.
Well, that's the intent. When
differently here than you will in this region.
Yeah, when you can map these areas like this, particularly if there is a problem. Maybe you have the corner down here drowns out, for example.
Sure.
There are additives that you can put on there, and of course, Helen, the chemical company, is very happy to sell you those. and they're quite reasonable priced. You know.
Oh, quite reasonable.
But it will test for all these levels: calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, iron, manganese, copper, nickel, phosphate, sulfate, boron, freon, and it tells us in those various regions what if it's high or low, and then we can figure out what we can afford to do to fix it.
Yeah, and that's the question: what can you afford? But so what are they? How are we doing, Joel?
We're doing
We're doing good. Okay. So each within the same field, I may need to apply XYZ here, and you can calibrate on the tractor. So what's applied there may be completely different than what's tried applied there.
And you know here
Theoretically, should you save some money too because you're not or not?
Well, you know, that would be a situation where you'd be investing more to increase your production, increase the productivity of the soils, and you would hopefully get that back times 10 eventually.
Yeah, eventually. So what is that technology called? I mean, is there a general, I mean, High Ground is the name of the company, but do they call it?
They call it Soil Management Services, and
the technology they're using?
Yeah, they're using this electromagnetic currents that they shoot them into the soils, and they bounce back at various degrees, and this large sensor that you pull on a sled can read it. It can read it, yeah.
Now, how long have you done this? Is this brand new?
This is relatively new. This is the first year we've done this. We've done soil testing before, where you literally go out there by hand and dig and take samples.
And they're also now using soil probes that you can put into the ground. But a lot of times that's testing the moisture. They can leave that. I think I've been told, I might have some of this incorrect, but they can leave that probe in the soil, and then you can always check the readings on it. Yeah. Have you done it?
And that's yes. And the IMS Irrigation Management Service. That's a service that's provided by the three NRCDs, 3 Natural Resource Conservation Districts.
Sure.
And that's a free service to anyone that that's having trouble applying either too much or too little water.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if finances are not a constraint, now that you've got this data on your fields, what would you do?
Well, this service is it's not free. It's a couple $100 per field.
Okay.
But it's not outrageous. And so I would call it reasonable for the information you get back. In many cases, we will recognize, and usually we're aware of it to begin with, but we'll recognize that micronutrients might need to be applied on a given field every year, because the soil is just not got everything it needs. So that's a reasonable, that's an affordable way, and actually a profitable way to add micronutrients, whether it be zinc. Zinc is almost always one that's zinc. Some of our soils are high in copper, calcium, but certain humic acid is another really good additive that will help loosen up the soil particles where they'll allow water. Some of our clay fields are so tight, and we have basically they're just bound up so tightly.
Sure.
They won't let the water pass, and you know that's not good either.
No.
Too much you don't want to waterlog your crops, and that can happen easily if it's really high in dense clays.
Yeah.
So you need to have a good mix.
But it sounds like this technology, even though sometimes you can ballpark some of the needs from your soil because you're familiar with the soil, this is going to be very specific and point out to you even within the same field where it's high and low and one of those micronutrients. And that proof of the pudding that soil is a living organism.
Absolutely.
And for the farmer, for what you've been doing for the last 40 years, farming, 40 years? 45?
Almost 45 now.
Almost 45 years. You know your soils, but now I bet you feel with this new technology that you...
Well, people don't give enough credit. Soils, good arable soils, farm ground, it takes thousands of years. That's why we need to be so careful and protect our soils. We talked earlier about utility grade solar on farm ground, and it's I personally think it's a terrible waste of a priceless commodity and a finite commodity.
Yeah.
The soils here on the earth, the good arable soils are finite, and we need to protect them. And farmland is so valuable. We need that for the production of foods and safe production of foods. So I'm very concerned about taking care of what God has provided for us.
Yeah, and it's neat to hear how you can literally look at those charts now with this new technology. I mean, you answered that question with fascination to me. That you knew your soils well before, now you really know them.
Yeah, although we had a pretty good idea, we were never able to pinpoint exactly what is needed. I'll give you an example, and many people are discovering this. With this technology, before we had water and fertilizer, and soil and sun. And pretty much that's it. So if a crop wasn't doing well, maybe a little more nitrogen. Well, in many cases, more nitrogen is not the solution. And we all realize that we don't want to ever use more than or apply more than the plants can use.
Right.
One, it's a waste of money, it's expensive.
Right.
And two, it's not good for the land. So this year, for example, we've been using, rather than UN32, liquid, an acid-based fertilizer, which is 32% nitrogen. We've been using a product which is a 28005, and it has only 28% nitrogen, but it has 5% sulfur.
Interesting.
And our soils all benefit from the addition of some sulfur.
The sulfur.
So there, that alone, just to make farming more profitable
Yeah,
and to be better stewards of the land, that's our goal.
right.
It's every farmer's goal.
Yeah.
Or
Are you
goals, I should say.
are our goals. Are you hopeful about agriculture in Arizona, even despite seeing all these quote unquote solar farms?
Well, and I'm very sensitive to anybody referring to a utility grade industrial type solar as a farm.
I agree.
That is absolutely
Not what it is.
Yeah, somebody really bright that wanted to sell gullible people.
Yeah.
Use that term, solar farms, and the only reason you could use farms is because in many cases they have gobbled up farmland because they have the backing of the federal government, the financial backing of the federal government, and it's so profitable that they are able to pay sometimes double what farmland is worth today as a farm. But I think that we will soon wake up to the fact that we have a finite number of acres of farmland, and farmland was chosen, by the way, to place solar panels on because no testing is required. No environmental testing is required.
Really?
Yeah, if a utility grade solar operation wanted to go out into the desert and put up solar panels, they would have to do environmental testing. And in many cases, it would not be allowed. Whereas on farm ground, there's none required because it's been farmed for many years. And why I can't tell you but I can tell you that there is no environmental testing necessary.
Wow. So despite all that, are you hopeful about farming in Pinal County?
I am. I think that we will all wake up to the fact that and treasure these lands, and we will constantly make better use of the water that we have, and the materials that we apply. We're doing just like the testing that we do. We've always taken petioles and soil samples. We've always done that so that we could, use less and do a better job. But we're getting better and better at that. Science is improving, and so we will hopefully continue to improve our yields, and we will be able to improve our yields with fewer inputs.
Awesome.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Noah Hiscox, thank you so much for taking the time to let me steal you away from your always busy days, and thank you for being one of our farmers in Pinal County
It's
and
my pleasure.
assuring that we get fed and clothed.
Thank you, Julie.
Yes.
You. It's a pleasure.